Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why and how people buy. Today, I'm super excited. I got this guy that I've been dying to talk to. He finally agreed, which I think was smart on his part, because I was going to hunt you down, track you down. By the way, I had you straight up in my cadences. You were going to come on this show one way or another. If I had to fly to Boston, John Barrows, it was going to happen. Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've been a fan, so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Mutual admiration. One of the things I like about John Barrows, in fact, let people know who you are, John. Give us your 60-second commercial.
Yeah, I'm a sales guy who happens to train. So my whole life, I grew up Boston, got a degree in marketing because I didn't know what I wanted to be, fell into sales just like everybody else. DeWalt was my first job selling power tools. Xerox was where I got my sales education. Then I started a company doing IT services, ran that, sold it off to Staples, fastest growing company in Massachusetts for a few years in a row. Mm-hmm. Joined a training organization because I liked the content that I had taken the training and I thought it was legit. And then long story short, they screwed it all up and I took it over. So 10 years I've been on my own now and training companies like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, Google, Slack, all those fast growing tech companies and teaching their sales reps techniques and all the way through prospecting, all the way through negotiations and close.
It's an impressive resume. When I looked at the companies you've worked with, I'm like, he knows. But what I loved about you, and I told you this before you started recording, that one of the things I like about you is that you're very straightforward down the middle. And so I'm going to start out with, I think it's a tough question, but I'm sure you can handle it. Sure. What's wrong with selling today, man? What is wrong with selling today? I know you're saying, Victor, where do I begin? Pick a spot, man.
The silver. Let's start with the silver bullet question. You know what I mean? Everybody's looking for it. I think we've gone a little crazy as far as not really thinking about the buyer anymore. We're just thinking about our numbers. How many dials I have to make this week? How many cadences do I have to send out? And not really giving a shit about who the other person is on the other end of that phone, especially around prospecting, right? I think, everybody's looking for that tool, that thing that's going to help them all of a sudden get their huge pipeline or close that deal. And it's just not that easy. And it's frustrating for me because the give a shit factor is limited. You know what I mean? Like let's put it this way. I was doing a training and, there was about 200 people in this conference that I was doing. And this kid, raised his hand. He said, John, you train all these tech companies on the same stuff. A lot of our competitors, man. So how can we differentiate? If you're going to train all of us on the same stuff, how can I differentiate? And I said, 10, 60, 30. He said, what? I said, 10, 60, 30. I go, 10% of you in this room are going to take what I tell you to do and you're going to execute with it and take your careers to a whole different level. 60% of you are going to do something different because it's easy and it makes sense. And 30% of you ain't going to do shit different. And so the question isn't how many people can I train? The question is what percentage do you want to be in? And it's frustrating because you can tell, like when I do training, I could tell that there's about 10% of the room that get it, that are engaged, that are asking questions, that are really like want to evolve, want to get better. And then everybody else is kind of going through the motions. And I've been talking about death of the average sales rep for a while now. And this was before COVID. I've been watching technology take over a lot of what sales reps are doing, all the automated shit, right? And now COVID comes and punches us all square in the mouth. And, I'm sorry to say, look, I'm sure there's plenty of reps out there that through no fault of their own, they got let go, right? Because the business went out of business or they just couldn't afford it, whatever. But the vast majority of sales reps right now that are looking for a job are those average reps that were going through the motions. Because look, I'm sorry, when they go through layoffs, they don't start at the top. You know what I mean? They start at the bottom and they move their way up. So I think the biggest problem is, I don't know if you see it, like, people are still talking about like, hey, John, I need to make a transition to solution selling. Like my reps, show up and throw up too much. I'm like, I was hearing that 20 years ago and people are still showing up thinking that people give a shit about us. Like, come on. Like that's where I think like, it's still us centric. It's still look at how good we are. Look at how good my product is. And it's not customer centric in any way, shape or form. And I think we need to I'm hoping that this Corona, like this mess that we're in right now is kind of a recentering on what is important, which is quality over quantity all day long and actually giving a shit about the people that we're engaged with.
Every time I talk to when I do the training, people always ask me again, the silver bullet, right? How do I do it, Victor? And I'm like, dude, and I joke, say puke with them. Don't puke on them, puke with them. Yeah. Which means, man, you go in there and you feel their pain. You know what I mean? And you just straight up, I know what you're going through. And then I can talk to you. I don't even have to be stylistic about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's empathy, right? Like people talk about empathy. It cracks me up, right? When like back in March when everything hit hard, you all heard lead with empathy, lead with empathy, lead with empathy, right? And then all of a sudden, every single email in your inbox started with, "Hi, I hope you and your family are doing well," but then it would cut over some piece of crap value proposition and people thought that was empathy. And I'm like, that's not empathy.
That's sympathy, by the way.
Not
And
even that's because most of them were in some templated piece of crap cadence that was just going out to 500 other people that had that email address or whatever it is. Empathy is what you said, is putting yourself in that other person's shoes, trying to understand what their day-to-day looks like. And look, I tell people all the time, I don't help you. I don't sell anything. I really don't. I help you solve your problems or achieve your goals. Those are the two things that I do. And if your goals aren't big enough and your problems aren't big enough, why are we having this conversation? Right.
Why do you think they don't get it, John? I mean, dude, you and I like that lined up because I'm like, people always like, how do I sell, Victor? Well, damn it, first feel their pain, understand where they're coming from. Then you figure it's easy to figure out what they're trying to solve. Yeah. Sell to that. Right. What is it, man? What is it that holds people back? I see the market split in two. I love to hear your comments on this. There's still people who are looking backwards. Look, I'm a fan of solution selling, consultative selling, Matt Cannon, Neil Rackham, spin selling. I get it. I appreciate that.
Whatever,
yeah, I got it. I appreciate that. But I think there's a new breed that's starting to really understand it. But why do you think, what's happening here? Are we losing a lot? The average salesperson is going away. And then all of a sudden, I see the rise, and this is what I really wanted to talk to you about. I see the rise. I just want to call it a sales cyborg, right? Just for my words. Yep. Because they're using technology to figure out when, where, and how, layered with empathy. In other words, understanding their problem, but trying to figure out who they're trying to help. add some flavor to that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that cyborg, or I use the Ironman analogy. Like the sales rep of the future is, you got the suit, right? So you got Tony Stark, right? He's the human, right? And
I think I like yours better, actually.
Well, because check this out, right? So you got the human. You got these old school sales reps, for instance, that are great at relationship development, understand how to connect with people and kind of do that, right? But you can't just be that anymore because now you got these kids who understand how to use the technology, and they'll get to the table before you will. And half the battle is getting to the table, right? So with Tony, if he went out there by himself, right, as a human, I mean, he's got it all as a human, right? He's rich, he's good looking, he's smart, right? All that stuff. But if he goes out to fight this fight as a human against all those aliens, he gets smoked, right? So what does he have to do? He has to create the suit. Now, the suit's the technology, which is fantastic, but the problem is the suit doesn't work without Jarvis, the AI. So now you got those three, and now you can do some damage. And sales reps right now need to be that last mile. They need to use the technology and the resources to surface up the information in an efficient way so that when they make that last mile connection to the client, it's humanized, right? But it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel every single time. There's a lot of technology that can automate insights, client needs, like whatever it is, right? And also, recording calls and understanding all that stuff and, using AI, all that. So using that, but still being that human element to it. Because until computers start buying from computers, we got a chance, right?
We got that last mile. I like your phrase. We got that last mile if we work it right.
That's the way you're supposed to do it, right? And I think the reason that we're here with where we are is because, let's go back to education. It's the least educated profession in the world. It's the number one profession in the world. But I ask people all the time, hey, you got your sales degree?
Yeah.
Like I'm starting to see a few hands every once in a while, like, oh yeah, I got a minor in or whatever. But this is literally the number one profession in the world, but yet none of us are formally taught how to do it. And so what happens is you go get your degree in whatever, right? Because you think you know what you want to be when you grow up. And then you get out into the real world and you realize either, ooh, I don't want to do this, or B, I can't make enough money doing this. So, hey, I'm pretty good with people. I heard you can make some money in sales. Let me try that, right? And so they get into sales. But the problem with that is we get in and our training is either, hey, go follow that guy, he's pretty good, or here's a script. And we stumble and bumble our way through it. But like, I still think the stat out there is like 3 out of 4 people that get into sales every single year get out because it's that hard of a profession, right? But because of that lack of education, think about this. You got some kid, and by the way, today we are taught to the test, right? So all kids are taught to the test, MCAS, all that crap, right? So scripts, right? So you get a kid who's taught to the test. They come out of college. Then they get put in a situation with limited education on this profession. They get given a quota. They get given a territory. And they say, good luck. You take a seemingly good kid who would probably, rarely lie, cheat, or steal. you put them in that situation where if they don't succeed, they're probably going to get fired, and they definitely won't be able to pay their bills, right? Because it's mostly commission. You take a good kid, you put them in that scenario, they start doing some shady shit. You know what I mean? They start cutting corners.
Right.
And so, and then to layer on top of that, I don't know how old you are, but I'm, 44, Gen Xer, right?
Right.
Like when we grew up in sales, it was a numbers game. You know what I mean? It was like maybe 50 dials, like whatever it is. You had your pitch because it worked, because the internet really wasn't that prevalent and people didn't have as much information. So it wasn't. So now we are the managers, we are the executives, right? And we are coaching this younger generation. And I think our generation is lazy as shit, because everybody understands quality is the answer, right? Coaching and quality and all that other stuff's the answer, right? I mean, with account-based marketing, you see the trends all going towards quality. But quality is really hard to coach to. Quality is really hard to help develop, right? You know what's easy to develop? You know what's easy to coach to? Victor, did you make your 50 dials today? Did you send out your 100 cadences, right? That's a checkbox thing. And if you didn't do it, I'm going to smack you, right? So we're defaulting to the easy ways of managing, and we're not really addressing the root issue of this uneducated group of people and putting them in a position to be successful with tools and strategy and all the stuff that is necessary. So it's just this mess that just keeps perpetuating itself.
So what do you think of the I guess I could use the word juxtaposition. So, we got these managers now that kind of played with technology, but not a lot.
Yep.
They kind of, born and bred on ACT, moved into, whatever, spreadsheet, ACT, and then finally eventually Salesforce, right? And then now they're trying to manage a whole new breed of salespeople who are, I'll say dependent in a good way on technology, using the engagement platforms and so forth and so on. How do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because the number one thing, and I'm sure you see it as well as I do, the number one thing any direct line, frontline manager should do to improve the results of their team is do coaching. But it's the one that the last thing that they actually spend time doing, right? Most managers, so most sales reps, we get limited education, right? On, we hopefully get a training like yours or mine or whatever it is to get, that's how you do it, right? But managers get even less.
Right.
You know what I mean? Usually it's the best it's the best rep who gets promoted to be the manager. And usually that best rep is a best rep because they were an artist, not a scientist. They just kind of are good at what they do. And now you're putting that person and telling them to go replicate to everybody else, and they have no clue how to do it. Right. I actually don't want the best rep to be my manager. I want like the B+ rep, that consciously competent, right? Usually if you go through that whole square, right? Like the unconsciously competent ones, those are those A reps. Look, let them be reps. Let them go make it rain and get out of their way. You know what I mean?
That's my philosophy. Let them run. Let them run.
Because you'll frustrate them if you don't. But those consciously competent ones, those are the ones I want as managers. And those are the ones that I think are this new breed, if we do it right, that we can start to coach in a way that like leverages the tools and technologies that they know, but gives them the coaching and that type of thing that they need to take that next level in their careers.
Yeah, I want to just add a layer to that, because what you just said is simple. People go, yeah, I got that, but I don't think they're really hearing you. When you say consciously competent, you're really talking about somebody who's aware of what they know and what they don't know. And because they're aware of what they know and don't know, they know what to teach. And I make a distinction because I know unconsciously competent salespeople. The problem is they fall victim to something called Polanyi's paradox. Polanyi's paradox is you know it, but you can't explain it.
Yep, exactly.
And you don't want those. You want the consciously competent. I want people to understand that there's depth to what you're saying. There's very purposeful in what you're saying. It's not just a phrase. So I love that.
And there's a structure to it. Like I want the kid who can explain to me why they missed their number this quarter. Well, John, I did this many activity. I did 50 dials. My conversion ratios from first call to demo were this. My demos to proposal were this. My proposals to close business were here. The gap that I really missed this part was the demo piece. Not enough demos were converting to proposals. So I need some help on that. And I want to understand how I can improve myself in that area, right? That's the kid I want as a manager, because that kid has a process that can be replicated and be tweaked and tested, right? And that's where I think the best sales organizations and people that I find these days in sales are scientists more than artists.
Yeah,
I think they're looking at the data. They're adjusting, they're being agile, they're making, they're testing all the time, whether it's a subject line or asking how they intro a meeting or how they close a meeting. Like they actually are consciously testing those things on a consistent basis.
Which is why I know you're a fan and I am a fan of Gong.io.
Love it.
I love split testing. I think we both agree on that. I love what Gong is doing because they've taken it away from the anecdotal and put it into the science and say, look, and there's been some aha moments, like, oh, I never would have thought that.
Exactly.
Because what we haven't realized is that the stuff they've been teaching in the past, it was probably true before the internet. Maybe as the internet was coming about, maybe it was still true, but now it's a totally different animal. I always say that sales will be broken up into two eras, before the internet and after the internet. Very clear line of delineation.
Very clear.
On the technology piece, what are you seeing, John? Now, you mentioned something about this coronavirus. I think we were moving in a 45-degree angle, more technology. Now we just took a hard right turn and did that 90, right? And so what are you seeing? I mean, when you look at the SDRs or BDRs and then compare that to the AEs who are out in the field now, what are you seeing in terms of just what are you seeing? I kind of have some ideas, but I don't want to.
So here's what I'm seeing, and here's where I think things are going to go. I think we're moving back to full cycle sales. I think the predictable revenue model that hit, which was cool, right? It was kind of something new. We hadn't really evolved in sales since predictable revenue came out, and whatever the book is, it is what it is. But it's a structure, right? Like segmentation of roles. And what that did was that gave us as organizations an easy way to scale. It was actually extremely beneficial for sales organizations because hire young talent, beat the crap out of them, make them make cold calls. They graduate to AEs and then senior and then enterprise, right? That type of thing. So it was great for us. It's horrible for the customer. It's not a good customer experience. You get called by some kid who doesn't know what they're talking about to ask some bant crap questions. Then you get flipped over to an AE who's going to cram a demo down your throat and then bring in a couple of engineers who are going to requalify every time they have to come back in. And then maybe, just maybe, you get to talk to a customer success person who still is wondering why the hell you bought what you bought, right? So that whole model, I think, I actually think is going to break, and I'm watching it break. And so what I think is going to happen is SDRs, as opposed to being that initial job in sales at this point, I think SDRs are going to move more under marketing than ever. They're going to become marketing and operations because these kids are great at technology, and it's going to be about playing with these technologies and gaining insights, right? And then moving under marketing with an account-based marketing approach that then will set up leads and meetings for full cycle sales reps again. But it's going to be inside, not field. I think the days of the enterprise, the old school enterprise rep that takes their clients out and relationship development and dinners and, golf and all that other stuff. I think that's a dinosaur way of looking at it. And don't get me wrong, there's certain industries that are going to stay that way. There's certain size deals that are always going to be that way. No question about it. But I think the percentage of that is going to drop significantly.
I love it. I see the visual you're giving. It's like if you got marketing automation on top, right? You got marketing up here. You got the SDRs, middle, the engagement platforms, and then you got the AEs. You can see you're seeing the SDRs being sucked up into the marketing piece, which I agree with you. And then it's interesting. You're seeing also the moving up of the AE into the SDR role, so to speak, inside sales role, and not having to get on a plane and travel.
Right. First of all, I think the stats are undeniable these days. I've saw all sorts of stuff from LinkedIn and coming out about how the customer actually enjoys the remote sale process more. They actually like it more.
They're liking it more.
You know why? Because it's no longer the bullshit hour-long conversation where I spend the first half hour talking about how you're a fisherman and I like to go fishing too, and and all this fluffy rapport building stuff. Now it's like, get to the goddamn point, get in, get out, whatever. And as a buyer, I'm like, good, I can control this because I can be like, sorry guys, I got to go, that type of thing. And you can pull in the people that you want to. So I actually think that this whole remote sales approach is going to be what the client expects moving forward, is going to be what they want moving forward. And so that's why these AEs, right, who are sitting down and used to live up, now they're sitting there kind of panicking in their house because they're like, holy shit, I've lost my whole way of how I used to sell. And because the SDRs right now are having a hard time getting those qualified meetings with senior level executives, because no senior level executive wants to have a conversation with some 22-year-old kid wet behind the ears that's going to ask them bant questions. It just doesn't, you know what I mean? There's no value in that. So now AEs are going to have to prospect. And I've never understood the mentality of an AE getting into a position where they relied on SDRs, marketing to give them enough meetings to close. Like as a former VP of sales and as a CEO of my own little company here, if an AE ever came to me and said, John, the reason for like, why, you know, when I asked, why'd you miss your quota? And if they said, well, it's because the SDR, I didn't get enough meetings or the marketing didn't, before that phrase even got out of their mouth, they'd be fired. I'd be like, get out of my office. If you're going to blame somebody else for lack of your success, I don't want you on my team.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wanted to, I just got a survey. Somebody afforded me a survey from the International Home Furniture Retail Association, furnitures, direct reps. And what was interesting, everything you just said about the data, they don't want to meet anymore. You know, you don't have to come in. But then they asked this question, John, would you prefer a virtual face-to-face or a phone call? And the majority went with phone call.
Yeah.
Well, like, just call me. Just call me.
I think that's kind of like why procurement doesn't like to talk to us and they like email, right? Because there's a relationship there. Like procurement, one of the procurement's tricks or techniques or whatever to deal with sales reps is they never want to talk to us.
Right.
We're always on an email so they can nitpick and, you know, whatever it is. Right. Yep.
Whittle you down.
Same reason from a client standpoint that they don't want to see us, because when they see us, now there's rapport, now there's real empathy. Now there's like, you know, oh shit, this is a person, where if it's on a call, I can still kind of treat you as you're just some sales rep, cold call, whatever, who gives a shit. Right. And I think you probably know this, the Dr. Albert Munchin, whatever the hell is communication model, where it's broken down, the way that people communicate is 8-35-57. So 8% is the words that we use, 35% is the tonality and how we use those words, and 57% is body language. Well, that's what video does. That's 100% of empathy. That's 100% of emotion. Whereas phone's only 43%, right? 8 plus 35. And then email's really only 8. And so that's why I think, you know, bare minimum, get them on the phone. But if you can do this, and you mentioned Gong just came out with some like, undeniable data. I think it's like the sales process, I think it's like 123% higher conversion ratios, close ratios when you use video throughout the sales process. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, it's funny because it takes away by the way, the gentleman is Albert Morabian, because people will be asking what that is.
I always forget his name.
That's right. It's but what's interesting, what you just said is that, you know, it takes away that excuse, getting back to the AE scenario you pointed out that comes into your office, that, you know, the SDRs are to blame, is that AEs were using this as an excuse why they weren't closing deals. Right. Well, if I'm not in the room with them, I just can't really connect with them. And so that's gone. What do you think of relationship selling? Again, I won't lead you. I'll just ask you the question. Where do you see it play in the sales process and the importance you would assign it?
Look, I think relationships are important. I think trust is more important.
I agree. One of the things and again, I love to, you know, come back at me if you disagree. Yeah. Which I don't doubt you will. But every time I hear relationship selling, I just want to stick a finger in my mouth and just gag a little bit, because what clients want today is, dude, can you help me solve a problem I got right now? Right. Can you really help me? Because here's my problem. And then as a result of that, if I like you, you help me solve a problem, and I trust you. Yep. Then, dude, let's have a relationship.
Relationship is value. So I think if I were to phrase it this way, I think relationships are important, but I think they've drastically shifted, because relationships used to be taking me out to golf, dinner, that type of stuff, right? Now it's value. Because look, you and I, Victor, like we could have a long-standing relationship and I could think you're a great guy. But if your competitor is sharing insights with me, getting me to think about stuff, right? Like, and really challenging my frame of mind and helping me solve problems, well, and this is even prospecting, man. I've done this before where I've had clients who have had good relationships with other sales trainers, and I've just identified them as somebody I think I could really do some good work with and whatever. And so I've just continued to be like, hey man, just want to let you know, like saw this recently, was thinking of you, you know, have you had your team do this? Hey, by the way, here's a little video that I came across that I think is fire on how to make a cold call or whatever it is. Share that with your team, those type of things. And all of a sudden that person who had a great relationship over here with that with their long-standing relationship, all of a sudden says, all right, John, man, like I get more value out of you prospecting into me than I do on this relationship, because most people get lazy with relationships.
Correct.
You know what I mean? They rely on the relationship. And to me, relationships have changed. It's what value can you bring to me? Right.
Value first. And that's why, like I said, when I hear relationship selling, I don't know. What I like about what you just said is that, again, it eliminates another excuse, because I've always believed that if you're not the incumbent, the one they're buying from today, then position yourself number 2. and just keep chipping. You'll get the business. And I've done it over and over again, and you'll get the business. It's tenacity and persistence. But I like the fact that you're not just saying, hey, how's it going, Vic? You know, because nobody wants to hear that. People want to know, dude, you got something for me? Trying to help me here. Let's look at this technology piece for a little bit here, because I think it's really fascinating what's happening. Because I love your prognostication of, you know, the AEs moving in. That's interesting because, again, a lot of companies are actually making more money, more sales with their salespeople inside. And that's a mind blower.
And that's why, like CFOs right now are kind of looking at their P&L going, wait a minute. We not only survived this mess, but we're actually thriving. And oh, by the way, our expenses are 1/10 of what they used to be. And well, you forget about sales for a second. Let's think about real estate. I mean, I work with a lot of the tech companies. I'd say about 50% of my clients have implemented a permanent work from home policy.
Right.
Permanent. They're not going back into the offices. They're never going to ask their team to go back into the offices. They're probably going to have shared workspace where they can have team meetings and those type of things. But this is the new world order here, right?
Dude, this commercial building real estate, I'm seeing the signs. They can't fill the office spaces. They cannot.
I feel bad. I mean, I feel bad, but I don't. So, I mean, it's the same thing with AEs. You know what I mean? Like there is this trend of, again, value. And here in the States, and it's interesting because, you know, I did a post recently about, hey, what's the difference? You know, I've traveled all over the world. I'm sure you have, and trained in all sorts of different locations. And I kind of know some of the nuances of what's different, but I kind of said, hey, I'm doing a webinar on, you know, the difference in selling between EMEA and, you know, APAC in the US. And a lot of the feedback on the post was, well, America is very like down to business. Let's get to it. Right. And so EMEA and APAC, it's much more like you do have to kind of earn the trust first before you get to business. Right. So in general, so I think here in the States, we are getting more to get to the fucking point. You know, and I'm from Boston, you're from Chicago. Like we're kind of born and bred this way. The rest of the country might not be, you know, the South, the Midwest, those type of things. Right. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but I'm saying the tolerance for wasting time right now is so minimal. And so remote selling and figuring out how to bring value and not selling. You know what I mean? Like not like trying to always stuff it down somebody's throat, tell them how good your product is or whatever it is, but developing the rapport and the relationships by the value you bring to the conversation and how you get that client to think differently about their situation.
Yeah, no, I love it. I most of my teeth was cut in Latin America. Trust me, 2-3 hour dinners. I got them.
And you had to.
I mean, I had to. I remember I told one customer, I said, look, why don't I just buy you and your wife dinner? You name the place, I'll buy dinner, and then I'll show up in the last 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll discuss business. He goes, doesn't work that way, Victor.
Well, and I think that's what I'm really interested in. I actually think we as a society, US, are going to have an easier transition to this model than EMEA and APAC. Because it's inbred in us. It's like, all right, let's go. Where now moving into a virtual world in the real relationship societies, I think that's going to be, I don't know how they're going to adapt. I really don't. I think that's going to be.
I didn't think about it like that. You're right. That we're going to be able to make that pivot quickly. You're on LinkedIn a lot. And, you know, one of the things I enjoy about your posts is that you're quite direct sometimes. You know, there's always a snark in there. You know what I mean? There's always a snark in there. And so, you know, when you look at social media like LinkedIn and you see, I mean, I'm sure you get more than I do, probably all these stupid messages going, you know, hey, love what you're doing in the world, you know, and then the pitch. I mean, dude, rant on that for a second. Just for people who are listening to this, who do that, tell them why it's probably not a good idea.
Well, I mean, I think it's the same thing with emails. It's the same thing with cold calls. It's the same thing with anything, right? Nobody gives a shit about you. Like they just don't. For everybody listening to this, realize that no one gives a shit about you or the products that you are selling. They don't. They only care about themselves and their priorities and the challenges that they're faced with. And so I get 200 emails a day. I got, I don't know, 350,000 People follow me on LinkedIn. I get about 200 to 300 in-mails a week. And I don't know if you saw this post. I took a vacation for the first time in a while, a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. And I took 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks off. And for the first time in my professional career, I didn't check emails once, like not once. Didn't, because usually I'll be like late night when my wife's and daughter's sleeping. I'll go, oh, let me just check the spam, right? This time I was like, nope, totally. So I came back. There was 2,040 emails in my inbox. Okay. So I decided to say, hey, let me categorize these, see where I'm spending my time, right? And there's LinkedIn invitations, list service that I've been on and all that, and then sales, right? And of the 2,040 emails that I got, 78 of them are what I would consider sales emails, okay? 0 of them were personalized. 0. In-mails, 356 in-mails that I got, right, in that time period. 7 of them were personalized, and only 1 of them used video, like video, so, video through LinkedIn. Guess which one was the one I responded to?
Video.
And I get 200 requests a day, right? Or a week. And what I do is I don't have the time to read your, even if you personalize your LinkedIn, I actually almost prefer you don't, because I don't want to read it, right?
I think I only gave you 2 lines, by the way. I think I only gave you 2 lines. So,
and usually what I'll do is I'll just accept all, but then the ones that I disconnect with are the ones that as soon as I hit accept, there's the immediate in-mail with the, hey, John, here's all the crap that we do, and I think you'd be a great fit for our services, whatever. I immediately go in, I unfollow, I unconnect, and I delete that person from my network. Those are the only ones I do it. It's because nobody cares about your pitch. Okay. I don't mind being connected with. I actually don't mind you sending me an in-mail or an email or a voicemail or a video or any of that stuff, but take the 2 fucking seconds to go on and read a post of mine, see what I'm doing on my website. I mean, I am so loud out there. Like, you've seen me on LinkedIn. I am not shy. I tell people about what I'm doing on my Instagram. I give you all the dirty about what's going on in my life, right? Where I'm making investments, what I think I need. Like, all you got to do is listen to one blog post or one podcast or one blog of mine, and you could pick something and say, hey, John, I was actually listening to your recent podcast with Victor, man. And when you talked about this, I thought it was super interesting. The reason I wanted to talk to you. Those are the ones I
like as well.
Right?
Yeah. One of the things, it's funny because I started I didn't know if you knew who I was, but I definitely knew who you were. Yep. And it was funny because I would comment here and there. And then sometimes when I see some of your snark stuff, I just had to like it because the guy's freaking do snarky, man. It's like, I would just laugh, right? Because some of the things I want to say, and when you would say, I say, yeah, thank you. Proxy, you're my proxy out there, right? And so, and I think I sent you a book, and I love what you respond. Dude, I'm not even going to probably read it, but if you want to send it, here's my address. I said, I like this guy. And I go, but in my mind, I go, I'm going to connect with this guy eventually. I don't know when. Yep. And I do that to say, not that I did that as a trick of any kind. No. Is that I genuinely said, I like this guy. I want to follow him. And then when I was ready to do this, I said, I got you in my sights now. I'm ready for you. And you said, connect with your assistant. Yep. I said, I think I responded like, dude, I'm coming. I'm just letting you know, you're on my show. And
because of how you had done that, I actually, usually what I'll do, because I get, 50 requests a week, right?
I'm sure.
And usually it's a templated, go talk to my team. This one, because I had seen and because of the book and those type of things, I forwarded, I said, yes, go do that. But then I forwarded it to my team and I said, hey, this is one I'll go on. You know what I mean? This is one I will say yes to, right? Versus my team evaluates and they look at the audience and all that other stuff. They look at kind of some objective stuff. There's ones that I choose to say, no. Regardless of what this looks like, I want to be on this one. So because of that, and that's the same thing with prospecting, right? It goes back to the give a shit factor of if you fit that real profile of somebody that I think I can make a difference for, right? Then I'm going to learn about you. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to I'm going to comment. I'm going to share. I'm going to make whatever. And I'm going to, kind of Gary Vee's book, jab, 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 right hook, right? Like I'm going to jab a little bit here and warm you up a little bit. And then when the time's right, to your point, the sniper, now I'm going to ask. And because I've set the stage for that enough, the likelihood of the yes is so much higher. And if you treat clients like that, your activity level is not going to be that high. Okay. It's not. But the quality of what you bring in is going to be so much greater. And the conversations are going to be so much more interesting. right? And that's where I think going back to like, what's the danger here? It's that give a shit factor, man. The people who don't give a shit and are just trying to hit you as a number, they're going to get commoditized and replaced.
I think was it Gary Vee who said that the new coin of the realm, he said something like patience.
Yeah.
And
patience is the new, yeah.
Right. He said something. What did he say? He said something.
He said, be quick, but patient, right? Be quick by like going, but be patient with your career. Right. Because you're not going to be an over the.
Oh, no. On this one, he was talking about, I didn't hear that one, but on outreach, he says, be patient in your nurturing.
Oh, yeah.
As you're reaching out, it's not the quick sex. Let's do a lot of foreplay here. Let's go back and forth. And that's kind of what you're saying.
Well, it goes back to like where I think going back to science and that I think sales needs to take a page from marketing, right? Marketing is all about an impression world. Like they see you, they hear you, and what marketing's trying to do is subconsciously or consciously get you into a point where you have a favorable impression of their brand, right? I mean, that's the whole goal of marketing at the end of the day, right? So that when I think of Victor, I think quality, I think, you know what I mean? Like you have a persona that I think, right, from a marketing standpoint. Now, as sales reps, I think we need to do the same thing. I think we need to start taking our own personal brands into the equation. I think we have to be nurturing to the point where that's why it's important to go on somebody's and not just like, but comment on their post, retweet something. And look, they may not consciously notice your name or your face or whatever it is, but you do that enough times and there's enough positive impressions in there, you can then come back and cash out, right? Eventually when the time's right. And I think we need to start taking on more of that.
Well, let me pitch your program and your website because jbarrows.com, correct?
Yep.
jbarrows.com. And so one of your guys reached out to me and I can't remember his name right now.
James or Morgan?
James Buckley.
Yeah. James Buckley. Yep.
James Buckley reached out.
Say what sales, Buckley. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Say what sales. So I go, who is this guy? I go, and he pitched the whole thing. He said, look, Victor. And he set it up like people never looked at branding themselves. Salespeople never looked at themselves. Direct salesperson never looked at themselves in brand. I go, I guess I've never really thought about it. Yeah. And so I sent him an email back. I said, because he put a video on there and he's such he seems like such a lovable guy.
Oh,
I don't even know the guy.
Just a ball of, he's like a huge teddy bear with just,
And so I was like, I kind of like this guy. And then I sent him back. I said, well, send me an outline because I don't really know him.
Yep.
And he responded with an outline. So your boy did his job, man. You trained him well. He did his job. He was on point. Talk to me about, and I know we're another 5 or 10 minutes. We're short on time. I want to be respectful.
No, it's all right.
Talk to me about ABM, man. Account-based marketing and how, I read that book, B2B is ABM. And I just thought it was an interesting paradigm. But, what's your take on ABM?
I think it's marketing's realization that they got a little out of control. You know what I mean? I think, I love when people call it to like the acronyms, like give me a break. Everybody's got to come up with just because you come up with a new acronym doesn't mean it's new, right?
It is, by the way, when I figured, I don't mean to interrupt, but when I, read the book, I go, wait a minute, this has been around. It just has a new name.
Forever. It really has. And so I think what happened was marketing, 10 years ago, all these marketing automation tools came out and marketing, like content marketing hit. And it was like, ooh, and they just went batshit crazy with content marketing. And it was a volume game all over the place and spam the crap out of everybody, inbound lead flow, landing page to here, right? I think ABM is just a realization of, oops, we might have gone a little too far with this volume play here. Like maybe, just maybe we should go back to actually giving a shit about the customer, right? And being relevant to them. Yeah. And so look, ABM is not for everybody, obviously. If you're in the SMB space selling something that's under a 10,000 ACV, ABM is not even something you should consider. But as you move upstream to mid-market and enterprise, ABM is the way you have to go because we are all stuck. We are all in this, B2C world of Amazon, right? Where we expect the buying experience to be frictionless. We expect when we log into Amazon that they're going to make recommendations for us that make sense, right? That are personalized to me. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what all these things are. Like you sign up for an app and to a hotel or whatever it is, and you go to your hotel, or you used to, and the exact type of pillows that you like are in your room. You know what I mean? That it's set to a certain temperature. Like you even now have it with Uber and Lyft. Like you can say, I want it to be 72 degrees. I want it to be, and it's saved that for you, right? That type of thing. So that's the experience we have as consumers, right? In the B2C space. That's what people are expecting. in the B2B space, right? So that's what ABM is really trying to address. It's still, I think most companies still don't really get it and really do it the right way, because I think we're being forced, we're in such a short-term focused society where I got to hit the end of the month. You know what I mean? Like, if I miss my number by 1 point, my stock drops by 75%.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's my fear right now. I mean, I think, and I don't want to get politics, but back in 2 elections ago, one of the candidates said that they had interviewed 50 CEOs of 50 of the largest organizations in the world, right? And they were asked this one simple question: if you could make a decision today that benefited your company, the environment, your people, your employees 5 years out, and you knew it would, like you could look 5 years out and say, my decision today, 5 years out, is going to make a huge difference across the board, right? But it was going to cost you 1 penny off of your stock price today, would you do it? 50 out of 50 of them said no.
Interesting.
Because they said, if I made that decision and it had that impact on the stock price, I wouldn't make 5 years. I wouldn't get to be there for 5 years.
Right. It's the way they're incentivized.
So we are in this VC. I mean, I don't know where you play from a client standpoint, but most of my clients are VC-backed tech startup companies. And the pressure on them to grow is so insane that you skip steps, and it's a quantity over quality. And it's just frustrating to watch.
Yeah. By the way, it's interesting. And we'll tangent off of this one and then we'll close it out. One of the things I have a pet peeve with, and I want to know where you sit on this one, is I don't think we pay enough attention to incentive programs when we onboard people, when we bring people on board to guide their behavior. What are your thoughts on that? I'll just leave it as general as that.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a detailed comp guy. I just comp based on what I want the reps to do, what I want them to sell. I mean, I inherently knew when I was 25 years old, when I was a first VP, that I was selling outsourced IT services, and we had projects and we had recurring revenue, right? And I looked at projects and I'm like, they take a ton of resources, they're not as profitable, and they don't really lead to much. Where this is value, right? This is valuation, this is margin, this is that. So I used to pay my reps like almost nothing, even if they brought in like $100,000 IT project, right, with all sorts of stuff, I'd pay them like 1 or 2% at best, right? Whereas if they brought in a $5,000 a month account, which is what I wanted, I would pay them 20% on that, right? Because I was trying to incentivize them of what was good for the business. And I think that's the rub right there, is what is good for the business, and how do you align your comp plan to make sure that you are driving that. Now, unfortunately, because of how the funding goes and all that other stuff, sometimes what's important to the business is volume. You know what I mean? So it's like, whatever, let's churn and burn. Let's just get as much exposure as we possibly can here in a short period of time, and eventually we'll become profitable. So I think that's why you don't see comp plans structured in the quality of like what the reps should be doing, because it's what the company needs them to do in that period of time or whatever it is. But I think comp plans should be changed yearly at least. You know what I mean? They should always be looked at and say, hey, wait a minute, we're shifting right now. We need to restructure this and make it fair, obviously, on both sides. But, I always joke, like when somebody, you always see the B or the C rep complain about the A rep and how they do half as much work and make twice as much money, right? Type of thing. And how they're manipulating the comp plan. I'm like, you dipshit. Do you realize that the reason there's a hole in that comp plan is because the company wanted there to be that hole in the comp plan, because that's the thing they want you to sell. And that's A rep inherently knows that, okay, if I'm going to get paid 3x more to sell that, and I only, you know what I mean? Then why not just sell that?
Right. And you got to be careful. Hey, by the way, John, what was your first sales moment when you knew you wanted to be in sales, man? We'll end with that one, man.
I evolved into it like everybody else. I mean, I think I was always kind of like in the mode of, my mom always said that I was like, for one reason, I was always money motivated. Like I always wanted to make money so I could afford the stuff that I wanted to buy.
This is why I know I like you, man. You see the way money comes out of your mouth like that. You just say, I want to make money. Some people just hesitate with that.
Well,
no, I want to make money.
Look, if anybody gets into sales because that's their only driver, then you're a douchebag sales rep. Yeah. You get into the world of the Grant Cardones and stuff, who I think are just dirt. But if you're not, like, success is everybody has their own definition of success, right? And I always say money doesn't solve, money doesn't buy happiness, but it gets rid of unhappiness. And for me, I wanted the flexibility of making my own choices, even at a young age. And so I was always kind of figuring out how to take, I remember the first thing I sold was, now that we're Halloween area, it was like these mini pumpkins. You know how when you go in now and you can see the mini pumpkins with the faces on them, people paint little faces on them, you can buy them in the stores. Well, what I used to do is I was an artist when I was a kid. That was my first major in college, actually.
I could see it, man. I could see it.
So what I would do is I would go buy these pumpkins for like $1. I would come home and I would paint these funny faces on them, and I would bring them to school. I was selling for $5, right? And it was so I could buy my Atari, and those type of things, back in the showing my age here. But I think really where it hit me about why I was good in sales and why I really wanted to make a career out of this was when I got fired from Staples. Actually, when my little Thrive Networks company got bought by Staples. I was going through that integration and I just wasn't the right fit. I kept fighting and fighting and fighting. But they ended up offering me another position, i.e. firing me. And I sat and I kind of had this panic attack of like, okay, shit. I'm like, what am I? Like, what am I supposed to do next? Because for 7 years, I was an IT sales guy. I was selling IT services and I had my head down. I haven't thought of a single thing otherwise. Right. And so now I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And I literally, I was like, am I an IT sales guy? Is that what I am? I'm like, I don't even like computers. Like, I really don't. Like, I like how I like the productivity they allow me, but I could give a shit what a server does. I could give a shit what a firewall does, right? So my wife was actually the one who helped me figure this out. She said, well, let's look back at your career and figure out why were you the best rep in each one of those, companies, right? And so DeWalt. She's like, why were you the top rep in DeWalt, at least in the region? I was like, well, I don't know. Like, DeWalt power tools are pretty badass. Like, they're cool. So it wasn't hard for me to sell DeWalt power tools, right? Because I genuinely believed in them, right? And then it was Xerox, right? And I was like, I didn't care about copiers, but why was I the best rep at Xerox in the region? Well, because at the time, I genuinely believed that Xerox was the best profession in the world. I'm sorry, best copier in the world, right? So it was easy for me to represent that. Thrive, my company. It's not that I cared about computers. I believed that my people that we were representing were going to do the right thing for the client, right? And so when I started to understand that it dawned on me that it didn't matter what I sold. It mattered that I believed in what I sold.
There you go.
And that, to me, I think sales, to finish up here, is I genuinely believe that sales is the transfer of enthusiasm. I believe that strongly in what I do, that if you fit that profile in any way, shape, or form, my job is to transfer a little bit of that enthusiasm over to you. And I beg anybody out there right now who's listening to this, if you do not believe in what you're selling, I'm begging you to go find another job. Go find something else to do. Either go find something else to sell that you can believe in, or go find another job in another industry. Because if you are out there selling something you don't believe, you are the douchebag sales rep that gives us the bad name. Of like when people say, oh, you're in sales, and they roll their eyes, it's because of those people that Glengarry Glen Ross, Wolf of Wall Street, boiler room people who only care about making commissions and who only care about themselves and could give a shit about helping the client in any way, shape, or form. And with that, I think that was probably my ahas when I felt that I made a difference. You know what I mean? When I came back to that client and they said, thank you, John, for introducing me to whatever this service was. And look at what it has done for my life, my career, my whatever it is. Like, that's where I got hooked on this.
Dude, that's the epitome of sales. I tell people, you don't have to love what you sell, but you should love what it does for your customer.
You got to believe it. You don't have to love it. You have to believe that for the right client, it makes a real difference.
It helps them. That's what I mean. It just helps them grow. And once you believe that it helps them grow, it's like you can sell that naturally. That note, Senor Barrows, where can they find more information on you, man? Give it up.
I appreciate it, Victor. jbarrows.com. You can go there. We have our new on-demand platform that we just launched. If you go to for individuals, it's $420 a year. You get everything that we give to train Salesforce and all those companies. You get it all for that. And then just LinkedIn. Those obviously, I actually do a ton of free consulting on Instagram. So if anybody's got an Instagram handle, it's John M as in Michael Barrows. That handle. If you want some free consulting, hit me up on that, because I'm always responding to people there. And and LinkedIn is probably where I'm most active with, the tips and ideas and stuff like that.
I'm going to encourage you to follow him, because you will not be bored and you will learn something. I think that's a beautiful combination. John Barrows, thank you very much. Victor Antonio with Sales Influence signing off, man. Thank you, guys.